I never thought a single word could destroy everything. I was sitting at the kitchen table, listening to Elijah and Marcus argue over the last packet of noodles. When I first felt it, the cold weight of suspicion. At the grocery store, someone muttered, "Loud enough for me to hear, child toucher." My heart froze. Me? Dangerous? Someone who lived for her boys? At work, the whispers spread. Regulars avoided my section, tips vanished, and my manager finally pulled me aside. "People are saying things," he said, eyes downcast. "I can't have that following this place." I left with my last paycheck in hand, shaking. The boys weren't spared. Elijah came home with bruised knuckles from kids calling him names. Marcus withdrew into silence, barely speaking, staring out windows for hours. I tried to explain the rumors were lies, but even my children looked at me with doubt. Then the truth hit me. David, my ex-husband, polished and perfect in the eyes of the world, was behind it. He had left me 3 years ago and was now using his reputation to destroy mine. My throat tightened, my chest ached, and a fire I hadn't known in years flared inside me. He thought he could take everything, my dignity, my life, my boys, but I refused to let him completely win. I tried to fight back. I wrote down every misdeed, every night he came home drunk, every lie he told, every woman who appeared suddenly in his life. I spoke to friends, but most shook their heads. "People don't want to hear this," they said. "He's untouchable." I confronted him at his workplace. "You've ruined my life," I said, voice trembling. "You've ruined our boys' lives. I won't let you keep doing this." His calm, mocking smile cut deeper than anything else. "No one believes you," he said. Security escorted me out, and suddenly the story twisted further. I wasn't just accused, I was unstable. At home, my boy's suffering deepened. Elijah's anger flared. Marcus retreated further, and I struggled to hold our fragile family together. Odd jobs, scrubbing floors, cleaning houses, anything to survive. Nights were hardest, sitting alone, watching them sleep, remembering the boy I had held in my arms, the childlike trust I was trying to protect from the world's poison. Elijah finally spoke the question I feared. "Why doesn't anyone fight for us?" His fists were bruised, his voice soft but laced with desperation. I wanted to tell him I was fighting in ways he couldn't see, but I didn't have the power to stop David or undo the lies. All I had was my presence, my voice, and my heart. "I'm fighting, Elijah," I whispered. "I'm doing everything I can." Evenings became our sanctuary. I read stories, coaxed small smiles, reminded them that lies could never touch our bond. These tiny victories became our armor against the cruelty surrounding us. Months passed in cautious survival. We moved quietly, avoiding gossip, whispers, and stares. Elijah's fights lessened, Marcus's silence softened, and glimpses of resilience appeared in them. I watched David, thriving, smiling, untouchable, and felt waves of fury. But hatred was a luxury I couldn't afford. I had to live for my boys, for our little family battered but not broken. Some nights I sat by the window, staring at empty streets, whispering, "We are still here. We are still us. No lie can take that away." It wasn't victory, it wasn't closure, but it was survival. And survival was all we had and all we needed. We endured. I survived each day with them, even when the world seemed determined to drag us down. I lost my job, my reputation, the sense of normalcy I'd fought for, but I still had them. That was enough. Every morning, I reminded myself that staying alive, protecting my boys, and keeping our love intact was the only fight that mattered. Even when David smiled in public, his lies polished and untouchable, I held my ground. My son's laughter, even brief, reminded me that we weren't defeated. That was our triumph, fragile but unbreakable. Our life was far from perfect. The scars would always remain, whispers never fully gone. But in the quiet, in our shared moments, we built strength no lie could destroy. I couldn't fix the past and I couldn't destroy David, but I could give my boys a future. And that, I realized, was worth surviving everything else. Days passed in a blur of survival. Elijah's anger simmered beneath the surface. while Marcus clung to the small moments of safety I could give them. I woke each morning exhausted, muscles aching from odd jobs, my spirit frayed by the constant reminders that the world had already judged us. But the boys needed me to keep going. My exhaustion didn't matter. They were my reason for breathing, for fighting, for enduring. I started noticing how the rumor had taken root everywhere. Even neighbors we had once called friends avoided eye contact. At the grocery store, whispers trailed behind me. At the boys' school, teachers' glances were careful, guarded, as if they feared touching a controversy they didn't understand. And yet the boys still clung to me, their small hands holding on to the only safety they had left. One afternoon, Elijah refused to go to school. "I can't," he said, his voice trembling. "They all hate us. They call me your son." I knelt beside him, holding his shoulders tightly. "I know it feels that way, Eli," I whispered, "but you are stronger than their words. We will get through this together." His eyes flickered with doubt, but I held him until he breathed easier. I kept a journal, documenting not just David's lies, but also our survival. Every small victory became evidence that we could endure. A day without fights at school, a small laugh from Marcus, Elijah finishing homework without incident. These moments were fragile, but they were proof we weren't broken. Evenings were sacred. I read stories, coaxed smiles, and reminded the boys that no rumor, no lie. No, David could take away our love or our bond. We clung to each other, a tiny family, battered but unbroken, moving forward in quiet defiance of the world that had tried to destroy us. The boys began to notice my own exhaustion, the lines forming around my eyes from sleepless nights, the quiet sighs when I thought no one was watching. Elijah asked questions I couldn't fully answer. "Mom, will I ever stop?" His voice was soft but filled with desperation. I didn't lie. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I do know this will survive, Elijah. We'll survive together." Marcus would watch quietly, sometimes speaking only to ask if we could have pancakes the next morning or if we could take a walk outside. His small requests became a tether to normalcy, reminders that our lives weren't completely consumed by fear and shame. I kept a journal now, not just of David's lies, but of our days, our small victories, and our endurance. Some nights I wrote until my hands ached, filling pages with moments of laughter, minor triumphs, and the love I saw in the boys' eyes. It became my lifeline, a record that we had survived, even as David thrived publicly, smiling, shaking hands, untouchable in his charm. I found strength in our quiet victories. I couldn't undo what he had done, but I could preserve what he could not destroy. Over time, the smallest victories began to pile up. Elijah started standing a little taller at school, answering questions in class without fear, even laughing again with friends who had stayed loyal. Marcus slowly came out of his shell, his laughter returning in quiet bursts that made my heart ache with relief and pride. Each smile, each little sign of normalcy reminded me that we weren't just surviving, we were reclaiming our lives. One afternoon, I received a letter from a local community center where I had volunteered before all the rumors. They had reviewed my records, spoken to people who truly knew me, and invited me to lead a small program helping children with reading. My heart lifted in a way it hadn't in years. This was more than a job, it was a chance to prove to the world and to myself that I was still capable of love, care, and strength. At school, things slowly improved too. Some parents who had believed the rumors began apologizing after hearing the truth from others who knew me. Teachers offered quiet support, and though some whispers lingered, the boys' laughter and confidence became louder than any lie. I held them close that night, feeling the weight lift little by little. David still existed in our world, still perfect on the outside, but his power over us had dwindled. We had endured, survived, and grown stronger. I no longer wasted energy on anger toward him. Our focus was on our family, on healing, and on building a life that wasn't defined by his lies. We started to create traditions again, Friday movie nights in the living room, Pancake breakfasts on Sundays, walks in the park after school. Elijah and Marcus began to thrive. And with every passing week, I saw more of the children they were meant to be. The fear that had once consumed them faded into resilience, laughter, and the joy of feeling safe at last. I found work I loved at the community center, surrounded by people who believed in me, respected me, and gave me the opportunity to help other children. Each success reminded me of my worth, and with it, I felt the confidence returning that David's lies had tried to steal. One evening, as the boys and I sat together watching the sunset from our small balcony, Elijah leaned against me. "Mom," he said softly, "we're okay now, right?" I hugged him tightly, tears in my eyes, and whispered, "Yes, Elijah, we're more than okay. We're safe and we're together. That's what matters." The boys laughed, Marcus joining in, and for the first time in years, the apartment felt warm and full of life instead of fear. We had survived the storm, and now we were finally free to live. The truth had taken its time, but it had returned. I learned that endurance, love, and small acts of courage could outlast cruelty and lies. Our family, battered but unbroken, had reclaimed our lives. The shadows of the past remained, yes, but they no longer dictated our future. And in the quiet of the evening, as I watched my boys play and laugh, I understood something vital. Happiness wasn't the absence of struggle, but the presence of hope, resilience, and love. We had survived, we had healed, and we were finally free. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were ours, and that I realized was everything.